Thank you for tuning in to WDRB Media, the voice of the community. You are listening to Beyond the Barriers with Coach Cindy
and Mayor Sherri. On the Beyond the Barriers radio show, we believe we have the power to change the trajectory of our economic, social, health, and education outcomes by removing barriers that lie within historically excluded communities through cooperative models.
And our show sponsors is Sand Hills Cooperation Association, located at 348 North Main Street, Troy, North Carolina, serving 5 counties: Montgomery, Randolph, Moore, Richmond, and Stanley counties.
Welcome to today's segment of Beyond the Barriers radio show. We're excited to dive into a crucial topic that lies at the heart of equitable progress: economic development in historically excluded communities. What does that look like? Throughout April, we'll be exploring the multifaceted aspects of economic development within communities that have historically been marginalized and overlooked. Our discussions will revolve around strategies, challenges, and promising initiatives aimed at fostering sustainable economic growth and prosperity in these areas. Join us as we engage with experts, community leaders, and advocates who are actively working towards dismantling barriers and creating opportunities for economic empowerment. Together, we'll examine what effective economic development entails and how it can uplift individuals, families, and entire communities. Tune in today and every week in the month of April as we embark on this insightful journey toward understanding and promoting economic equity and inclusion. Let's break down barriers and build bridges towards a more prosperous future for all. Ready to ignite change? Sand Hills Cooperation Association empowers historically excluded communities, helping them become self-sufficient. Join us every Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. for our Beyond the Barriers radio show on WDRB Media with Mayor Sherri
and Coach Cindy, addressing community challenges. Visit us at sandhillscooperation.org or visit us on Facebook, Sand Hills Cooperation Association, building brighter futures one community at a time.
Beyond the Barriers radio show.
Well, hello, Coach Cindy. How are you today?
I am wonderful, Mayor Sherri. Then we done marched out of March and into April already.
Right.
Wow.
All throughout March, we were talking about marching into wellness and health in historically excluded communities. We actually talked about our physical health as well as mental health also. Well, this month, in the month of April, we're going to be talking about our economic health.
Yes.
Okay, because April is economic development within historically excluded communities. And what does it look like?
And that's a very interesting question. And I think you could probably get an array of answers depending on who you talk to.
Right.
Right. When you say to the commoner or just a residential person, what is local economics look like to you? Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, you may have to explain what economics mean, because most of us don't consider our day-to-day life part of the economics of our community.
Right.
But if I ask you, how are things here? What are jobs like? And what are the prices of gas like? What is the grocery prices like? And how is income in your community? You would get some answers.
Right, exactly.
But they're not realizing that it's local economics, but they realize that it does affect how they view life.
Right.
And
right. And the quality of that life.
Quality of life.
Right.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
As we're talking about economic development, what does economic development mean to you as a community coach?
Well, as a community coach, economic development to me begins in the heart of the community, which I think is centered around our beliefs and practices culturally.
Okay.
So we're talking about in historically excluded communities.
Right.
Like there's a whole nother definition when I look at economic community coaching with those who just the community at large. But when we're looking inside of our historically excluded communities, I think the heartbeat of our economics is the church.
Now that's interesting.
Yes.
Because I thought all churches want is your money.
That is a narrative out there
that. However,
if it's a church that is based in love, a lot of what our excluded communities depend on are the things that the church do. The food bank, the clothing closets, the emergency funding. That helps with the economics. Now, in return, the church needs the support of that same community through tithing and offering. However, the burden still lies in the church to feed his sheep.
Right, exactly.
Right. So I think, especially in our communities and our historically marginalized communities, I think we do have a culture that we do look to the church. It's kind of fading because the church has somehow lost the essence of its purpose. But I don't think it's gone. And I think it's resurrection time. For our churches to get back into doing those things that actually boost the community's economic.
I think the whole separation between state and church, it pretty much confused a lot of things. I understand the basis behind it, where the church should not be influencing government and government should not be influencing church. But it's happening because guess what? The people that go to church are part of that government, right? They pay taxes. They are part of the whole system, the governmental system, whether it be locally, whether it be on a federal, state level. The government is made up of the people, and those people go to church, right? And so in the purpose of the church, when you think about the purpose of the church, when Jesus came, he came all about kingdom, his rulership, his dominion. And so it was all about making sure that the quality of life, going back, of people was improved.
That's right.
And so if there was oppression, Jesus said himself that the anointing is upon him. He came to preach the gospel to the poor. Right? But how do they get poor? It's based upon economy. Right? You know, the resources, where are the resources? And so the government is directly connected to resources, and the resources directly connected to. So all of these entities come together. What should churches be doing as it relates to economy?
That is a good question, because I think that churches have forgotten their economic value in communities. The preacher wants to preach the word. They want to tell you that you should be wealthy, you should be prosperous, you should be healthy. But I think the strategies they leave to outside forces. So I think in the resurrection of the essence of the church, they've got to take up that piece. Like, what are the strategies, kingdom strategies, that will give economic value to our historically excluded communities? That means they've got to come outside the walls, and they've got to work together collectively, and which is an initiative that our sponsors are forging. And I think that we're going to see an impact on that in our community's economics. Now they're not the whole piece, but they are the heart piece.
And that's good. That's whenever we talk about economic development, I was able to look up the etymology of to develop in 1650s. That word came from unroll, unfold, right? So to unroll, unfold, and a developer is one who unwraps, one who unveils, and also to find the potential, right? And to bring out that potential. So when we talk about economic development, it is unfolding more fully economics, right?
Now, who's better to do that than the ones connected to that kingdom value?
Exactly.
I'm excited about those possibilities. But let's look at economics as it is in our community. I think a lot of siloing happens. You know, I got mine, you get yours. Like,
I pull my own self by my bootstraps. Pull your own self up.
And I think that's what's kept us struggling, because now we hardly want to pay our tithes in church. One of the economic strategies that Jesus held high was love thy neighbor. as yourself. If we would employ that in economic value, like if I'm going to be good, then I need to make sure you're good.
Right.
Matter of fact, I need to know that I'm not good until I make sure you're good. Like if I'm eating, you should be eating.
Right.
And I'm not eating until you can eat. I think if we took that mindset, which takes love,
it does.
You have to love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
In order to make that work. But I think it's doable.
Oh, yeah.
I absolutely think it's doable. I don't think that Jesus came and taught anything that couldn't be done.
As a matter of fact, he came to show us
how to do it.
Right, exactly.
How to do it.
And he is our prime example of how things are supposed to work.
Exactly.
We got to live out what he lived out here in the earth realm, and then what he has in turn equipped us with.
Yep.
So we got somebody in our studio today. His name is Mr. Gerry McCants, and I am so excited about the work that he has been doing for communities. He has done a whole lot.
Yes, he has.
And he continues to do a lot.
Yes. Just reading his resume was like, man, a treasure trove.
And we need more like him. And so like Jesus did, he didn't show us what he could do, but he did show us what we could do. And Mr. McCants is doing just that. Did you have anything before we go into this?
No, I'm excited about talking to him, and I'm excited about our viewers, our listeners, hearing his strategies, how the work he has done has changed areas of our economics in our communities.
Awesome. So This is Beyond the Barriers radio show. We are in April with economic development within historically excluded communities. What does it look like? And I am your host, Mayor Sherri.
And I'm Coach Cindy.
And we'll be right back after the word from our sponsor.
I'm just a kid, but I know something big. I know the power of community. In our historically excluded neighborhoods, we can rise together. We need your help, your support. Let's build something stronger and break the cycle. A better future is within reach, but we need you. Join hands, be the change. Together, we are a force. This is our community, our story. Will you be a part of it? Visit sandhillscooperation.org and become a part of the change.
Beyond the Barriers radio show.
Welcome to Beyond the Barriers radio show. We are on WDRBmedia.com. I am your host, Mayor Sherri.
And I'm Coach Cindy.
And today in our studio, we have none other Mr. Gerry McCants. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you this morning?
Well, I am doing well. Thank you so much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and let them know all about Mr. McCants?
I'm Gerry McCants, owner of McCants LLC. I've been an entrepreneur for 35 plus years in different venues, publishing the Black Pages, producing Black Expos. Most recently in the last 10, 15 years, involved in a lot of consulting work, business relations, community outreach, community engagement. So anything that's dealing with African Americans, Black Americans across the globe, that's where you'll find me. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm a Virginia Union graduate. I'm also the MEGA for all you D9 persons in the audience, but that gives you a little bit of history about me.
Awesome.
But there's a lot of history there, and rich history, and we so do appreciate you. Your work in promoting economic independence for Black communities is commendable. Could you share with our listeners your perspective on the current state of economic mobility in historically excluded communities?
Sure. Sherri, I started this journey actually 35 plus years ago, working with a Black-owned newspaper out of Norfolk, Virginia, called the Journal and Guide. It's still in existence. Probably the third oldest Black weekly newspaper in the country. Mm-hmm. And I was able to understand the plight of Black Americans through that history of the newspaper, giving them a chance to meet business people, professionals, ministers, community organizers, etc., because that was a very important part of the Norfolk, Virginia, and Hampton Roads area sort of empowerment vehicle, the communication vehicle that we use on a day-to-day basis. That gave me sort of the runway to begin to think about entrepreneurship and what I needed to do, and why it was critical for all African Americans to look at how we can become more self-sufficient and independent of what's going on with the system that we live in. You know, I told someone I haven't worked for anybody that doesn't look like me in 35 plus years, and I'm not going to think about doing that.
Awesome.
And I think it's important for business owners, community-based organizations to realize the impact we have, because a lot of times we always don't have all the resources and the money we need in order to move forward. But if you look at our history and look at what the ancestors have taught us, we have been able to survive regardless of whatever it is that we've been challenged with, whatever barrier or obstacle that has been put in front of us. That's just part of our nature. We have a rich history, and we need to begin to employ that wherever we are across the globe. My message to everyone is, as someone once said, cast your buckets where you are. Begin to grow and plant the seed and fertilize it, but also look at how you can embrace our culture across the globe, across the pond, in Africa, and any nation or country that has people that have the same similarities in culture that we have here in America.
And your experience with the McCants Communications Group, as well as the Black Pages USA, we know that gives you a unique perspective on supporting Black-owned businesses. Can you tell us what are some key challenges these businesses face, and how can those businesses overcome them in order to thrive in today's society and economy?
We all talk about capital and money and those kinds of things, but I think the people that I've talked to, probably thousands of, more than several thousand companies over my lifetime, these are hardworking people who are committed to what they're doing. For the most part, they're pretty successful at what they're doing. I think you have to have a sort of stick-to-itness to make sure that whatever industry that you are involved in terms of your business, that you've got a plan and all that kind of stuff, the basic stuff that people talk about. But at the end of the day, we've got to get back to competing and determining what's in our best interest. And for the most part, Black Pages develop a ecosystem for Black companies to work within. In other words, we were able to connect the dots across 5 states, 12 cities in the Southeast, and give business owners a platform not to just do business where they are, but to do business across those boundaries and those state lines and those city lines, that they could expand their business into other territories. And I think we have that capacity. We just need the right kind of leadership in place in order to move us forward and create a blueprint that's effective for us. And you always got to modify that blueprint over so many years if something doesn't work. But I think we've got enough intelligence and enough resources based on our consumer spending. We talk about that $1.7 trillion annually in the United States, probably the 15th or 16th largest country in the world, right here in America, that we can use some of those resources, use our education in order to advance our whatever we need in the ecosystem.
I keep hearing what's resonating with me is that you're talking about working from within, connecting our own dots, garnering our own resources, learning how to use what we have to grow our economy. Because you're right, we spend 1.7 trillion, but how much of that actually comes into our community?
Exactly.
So, and I know in that work, because I've worked with you on other levels of in other capacities. You said earlier that, you haven't worked for anybody that doesn't look like you. However, I know you do have to do collaborations. Mm-hmm. So how has your collaborations with elected officials, which has been a cornerstone of your approach to economic development, how do you envision fostering stronger partnerships between community leaders and politicians to ensure economic prosperity reaches all the segments of society?
there has to be a fair trade.
You better say it.
If there's not a fair trade, then it's going to be difficult to find a bridge that's going to empower African Americans and Black people. For an example, the political spectrum is critically important, as we know, and sometimes we don't always control the majority of the votes as it relates to city council or school board or county commissioners or what have you, the state legislative body. But we've got to put items on the table that's in our best interest. And sometimes it's non-negotiable. Unfortunately, people who have been in charge haven't given us much option or runway to do what we need to do. And we've got to be tough about some of the things that we're demanding and requesting that's going to impact our communities. If not, we're not going to advance. When elected officials come to you and say they want your support, your vote is economic empowerment to get what you want. They need to invest in that, and we need to stop giving our votes away just cause they may be Democrat or Republican.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Preach, my brother.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. And I know I'm going to probably get some hairs raising on arms and heads about this. Listen, church has always been a vehicle that we've used historically. We have to get our leadership in the church to understand we cannot give away our votes. I don't care who comes to the church. They have to earn that vote, and we've got to negotiate what's in our best interest for the people in the community that look like us, who are African Americans. So, we got races going all over the country. If it's not an economic agenda that's going to have some impact and provide resources for our community, we need to stand still. Those are my thoughts.
Those are great thoughts.
Very great thoughts. I'm telling, and we can stay on that. We need to stay on that forever.
Yes.
And nail that into our historically excluded communities, because you can go down and give somebody $2 and they think that you have given them $1 million. And it's like, okay, no, first and foremost, look at the condition of our communities and what resources you have withheld from us, but yet you want us to vote for you every single year.
Right.
I mean, every single election cycle. So now I know one of the things that we get here at SCA, Sand Hills Cooperation Association, are Black businesses that come and they ask us about government contracts. And I know that you are well aware of the disparity in government contracts for Black businesses, and it is a persistent issue. What actionable steps do you propose to address this disparity in order to create a more equitable opportunity for our minority-owned businesses?
Great question. We certainly have to mobilize, but we got to begin to talk about tax dollars. We are paying taxes into a public system and getting less than 2 or 3% return on our investment. That is absolutely crazy.
It is.
And I'm co-founder and co-chair of the Greensboro Business League. And we started raising that issue back in 2018 in Greensboro, that we were paying taxes into a system. Out of $1 billion in contracts, we were getting less than 2 or 3%. Why are we paying taxes?
Right.
Elected officials will begin to sit up in their seats because they understand that tax dollars are the revenue that drives these municipalities. We got to be able to talk on the level that they understand. Contractors and business owners who are seeking to do business with the public sector has to understand the politics of government, and the government is for the people. I think, a lot of people forget that. It's for the people, by the people. Those public officials who are sitting in those seats, those people who work for government, work for the people. The tax dollars pay for their salaries, tax dollars, fees, whatever it is. It could be parking fees. All that goes into a bucket, and they determine where that money is going to be spent. And if you're not at the table and have some representation, they're out of order. And so we've got to begin to mobilize and have an ask in a proposal kind of platform to say, here's what we think based on the tax dollars we're spending, based on the investment that we made in the community. Here's what we think our return should be. And you got to stand fast on that.
I think that's one of our challenges, is that, like Sherri mentioned earlier, they come down and they put a few dollars in one person or two people's pocket, buying their vote. Like you mentioned earlier, They buy their vote. And so the persons that they choose to do that with has no real connection with our communities. Like they're thinking about their own self-economics, because if they looked around, they would see, I'm voting this person in, but it's not changing the community. It's not bettering our community. Yeah, those conversations, we have to have them, and we have to keep them on the plate, because They're hard conversations.
Right.
They're hard, and people don't want to talk about that. But Sherri and I have to deal with it.
Right.
Quite a bit.
And Cindy, it's an uphill climb because the way the system is designed, if you don't have representation, those folk will take money wherever they want to take it. You can't let them do it. Look, if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't let you do it.
Exactly.
And don't.
We'll fight you tooth and nail.
So you can do things like create your own charter in your own municipality if you have to.
See,
sometimes you have to walk away from the table if the deal doesn't look right for you, and stand fast to that.
Now, see, you done said a mouthful.
I tell you, I've been reading my thoughts.
Exactly.
Those things happen. They have to start on the local area.
Right.
We have to start in our communities, in our small, historically excluded communities, doing the work. And you're right, it is an uphill battle, but it's one worth having. Especially when we understand when we're doing good, doing right, we win. We're going to keep fighting.
Right. And you have to choose your players. Let's be realistic. Everybody doesn't need, even though you're representing mass body of people, everybody doesn't always need to be at the table all the time when you're trying to negotiate what's in the best interest. Poll your constituents or survey your constituents, find out what the needs are. They appoint you to act as their liaison, and then you negotiate what you think is in the best interest. At the end of the day, in this capitalist society, that's a cost. It costs money, it costs time, it's a commitment, and it's hard work. And I think people have to realize it's not an easy proposition. But we didn't get in the situation we're in easily either.
No, we did not.
We were manipulated. We have to realize all the things that we're up against and what we have to do to make sure that we maintain the kind of integrity and credibility as we possibly can.
But beyond local initiatives, in an article in 2018, you mentioned the importance of seeking economic partners outside the community. Could you elaborate on how forging these external partnerships can contribute to the growth and the sustainability of historically excluded communities?
Yeah, I've served on a number of boards and commissions and banks and certain things of that nature. And you have to really attempt to determine how you can forge those relationships and begin to determine again what resources that you need that aligns with that particular organization. Like for an example, I was on your website and I saw NCIDEA, which I've served on that Black Entrepreneurship Council for a number of years. And their primary focus is to make sure that businesses and organizations that are Black owned and small have opportunities for grants and things of that nature. If that aligns with what your mission is, then that's an organization that you should partner with. If the Black Chamber is an organization that aligns with your mission, even though it's African American Black owned, then you need to look at ways to create one or two things that's equally important for both organizations. If one of the local banks that's not Black owned is a bank that you need to buy shares in other words, buy stock in, you have a seat at the table. Then you need to align yourself with that bank if they're making the right kinds of investments. There are a few partners out there, non-traditional organizations that will attempt to do the right thing. But you got to do your homework on it. Because sometimes people say something and they do something different. But there are organizations out there that have some sincere interest in what you're doing. And you have to evaluate their board of directors. You got to evaluate the people that are their supporters. Then you have to make a determination if these 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 organizations are in your best interest. And sometimes those organizations are connected to somebody else. They have to do certain things because they're getting funding from certain organizations.
Right.
For an example, there's a large organization called the Kauffman Foundation that does a lot of diverse kind of investment in organizations like yours. And they may give the community foundation some money to carry out some initiatives. You need to be a part of that. You need to find out what they're doing and how they're doing it, because if you follow the money, you'll find your answer 100%, 100% of the time. And so you got to identify organizations in your community that have similar interests or have a mission that supports what you're doing and support your mission, and then you can determine how you want to engage them after that.
That's really good. We're going to go into break, and we're going to come right back with Mr. McCants. April is economic development within historically excluded communities. What does it look like? After the break, we're going to continue this discussion, and we will be right back.
Are you ready to elevate your brand and connect with your audience in a meaningful way? Look no further than McCants Communications, your premier multimedia services provider in Greensboro and surrounding areas. For over 2 decades, McCants Communications has been at the forefront of supporting minority business development, offering platforms like the Black Pages USA magazine and the Black Expo Tour. Led by Gerry McCants, a seasoned advocate for minority business ownership, McCants Communications specializes in communication, branding, and marketing strategies that resonate with diverse audiences. From community relations to consulting, McCants Communications bridges the gap between municipalities, corporations, and minority-owned businesses. Visit us at McCants Communication Group, 301 North Elm Street, Suite 268, Greensboro, North Carolina 27401, or call us at 336-274-1709. You can also explore our services online at mccantscom.com. McCants Communications, where meaningful connections are made.
Get ready to dive into the heart of economic liberation with the Doing Business in the Motherland podcast. Hosted by Peter Greer, publisher of Greater Diversity News, and co-hosted by Gerry McCants. This podcast is your guide to seizing opportunities in the motherland. Join the worldwide conversation on doing business in Africa, where Black leaders are paving the way for economic empowerment. Discover firsthand accounts from investors like Darren Britt, who found inspiration from the African Diaspora Development Institute, ADDI. Led by visionary Dr. Arikana Chihambare, ADDI is igniting a movement for economic liberation. Explore resources like the book Africa 101 and join the mission for collective economics. Tune in for interviews from business giants like Bill Williams and community leaders like Representative Nikita Ricks, all committed to shaping Africa's future. Don't miss out. Subscribe to Greater Diversity News, e-news, and YouTube channel for exclusive content. Visit greaterdiversity.com for more information and join the movement for economic liberation in Africa. Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and those streaming live through free TuneIn radio app, Streamer, Apple Music, Radio Seed, and more. You're listening to Beyond the Barriers radio show, and I'm your host, Mayor Sherri.
And I'm Coach Cindy.
If you're just tuning in, we are discussing economic development within historically excluded communities. What does it look like? And joining us in the studio is today's guest, Mr. McCants. And we are in our interview, and we've been getting some really good nuggets. So we're going to dive right back in, Mr. McCants. So now, you're a former statewide president of the North Carolina Black Chamber of Commerce, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So we know that you've encountered various strategies to promote minority entrepreneurship. Can you tell us what innovative approaches do you believe are essential for fostering sustainable economic growth within our historically excluded communities?
It's a good question. I spent several years as a president of the North Carolina Black Chamber. Started as the president of the Wilmington Black Chamber in Wilmington, North Carolina, and helped co-found the Winston-Salem Black Chamber. One of the things is I tell most people, even when I'm talking about Africa, we have to get on the ground in these communities to really understand what some of the needs are so we can create some strategies and sort of resolutions between parties that's going to help advance our economic agenda. And as I said to someone actually early today, sometimes we have to identify 2 or 3 things that we can do well. If the economic agenda is a platform that we need to be developing, let's talk about that. If the political platform is something that we need to add to that, let's talk about that. But some of the other stuff that we talk about, sometimes it becomes a distraction and we can't really focus on. I'm not saying they're not important. All I'm saying, they become too much of a mountain to climb when the 2 most important things is economics, the political, and really health. I mean, those are probably the top 3 other than the things that you believe in personally. Those are the things in education. Those are the things that we've got to focus around and build our platform around. So with the Black Chamber, I had to mobilize business people who had those interests. I mean, their interest primarily is, how can I get more revenue in my business? How can I create more opportunities? So they have a single focus kind of mentality when it comes to doing business. And so you got to get several people around the table with similar interests to focus on that. So I think in going into communities, particularly here in this Greensboro, Charlotte, Southern Pines, so on and so forth, you have to rally people in the community that are committed to this 24/7. And that's a tough ask sometimes because people have all these things they have to do. But at the end of the day, if you can't eat, if you can't pay your bills, if you can't support your quality of life, those kitchen table items, food, clothing, shelter, the things we talk about, if you can't do that, then why are we here?
Right.
We're not here just to suffer.
See,
exactly.
We're here to enjoy a good quality of life, and that should be the platform. And I hope that was the platform that I was trying to promote as it relates to the Black Chamber, but developing those kind of concepts and ideals. And sometimes it takes people a while to catch on because they're conditioned to do something else. And so you're not going to win all the battles. Pick your battles and keep it moving. Find people who have like interests and continue on the journey. And it takes time. Not something that's going to happen overnight, but if you don't start, it won't happen.
Exactly. It won't happen at all. That's so true.
I love how you continue to say that same thing, like it doesn't happen overnight and it does take time, because we often get weary in well doing. And if something is not happening at the rate that we want it to happen, we often, and we see it all the time, people will start something, and if it doesn't look like it's getting any traction, they'll go backwards or they'll just go silent. So thank you so much. That's encouraging. As many times as it needs to be said, I know for me, it is very encouraging to say, hey, look, we've been in this day for a long time. 35 years is not a little bit of time. And although it may not look like the needle is moving, it is moving, and it is moving in the right direction. We just got to continue it forward. So once again, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
I do want to highlight an interview that you had with Peter Greer and Darren Davis. And that interview, it did highlight the substantial purchasing power of our Black people in the U.S. And that's juxtaposed with Africa's economy. So could you delve deeper into how enhancing business relationships between Africans and Black people in the U.S. can contribute to our economic liberation and mobility?
Very good question. Good segue. We have a podcast that I sort of co-host with Peter Greer, who's the publisher of Greater Diversity News, and his wife, Kathy Greer, called Economic Liberation of Africa. And I have to say to everyone, we all have some more research and learning we have to do about the continent. There are 1.45 billion people across the globe, and a lot of that population is young. We have resources in Africa that you don't have anywhere else. Whatever those elements are, they're in Africa. That's why you see China in Africa developing. You see the Indians in Africa developing. You see the British in Africa developing. You see America in Africa. All these, the Dutch. And so we have to understand part of our economic plight and independence lies across the pond, across the globe. We have to begin to do trading with each other. We have to begin to share information with each other. For an example, my CPA here in North Carolina is from Cameroon. So we have those conversations all the time. The doctor's from Ghana. So we have those conversations all the time. I've had clients from Nigeria who are in America. So you have people living in the U.S. who have traveled from Africa here for economic freedom or whatever they traveled here for, to go to school, create businesses, and they're still traveling back and forth to the motherland. And many of us don't have a clue what's going on over there. But some of those areas look like some of the areas we see here in the United States. And we just have to familiarize ourselves with the economy, with the political landscape, with creating the kind of relationships we need, because there's going to be some language barriers and so on and so forth. But that is a destination point that we really need to focus on as it relates to economic empowerment and economic development. And the cost of living is cheaper. So if you have American dollars that you're trying to invest in some of these countries in Africa, in some of these communities, you might want to do your homework and see if that's in your best interest, because right now there are chiefs and leaders in those countries who are saying, look, we want you here. We don't have all the skill set that we need in order to develop these communities. And there can be a mutual trade relationship between both parties. Just like if you travel to New York or California, you always want to do your homework before you go there, where you need to stay, where you need to eat, do you have family there? Well, you need to do the same thing when you travel abroad, to make sure that whatever you're seeking, whether it's education, economic independence, whether it's you're retired, you want to, explore, you need to do your homework. And I think there are significant opportunities. And young people see that. We got the internet. So, you don't have to, I tell people, you can't just drive your car to Africa.
But you can visit on the internet.
Yeah. You have a phone call, you can Zoom, you can do all those things with technology, as long as we got a clear line. But there are opportunities there. And the more and more I talk to people, and the more and more that I find Black companies in America who are doing business in Africa already. There's a gentleman here, African American, in Greensboro. He does business in Africa. He ships plastic parts to these countries. And so folk are already doing business. We just don't know about it. So we got to be able to communicate the value of that process and opportunity, and how we can become a part of it by connecting the dots and linking people together and having the conversations ongoing. So I hope I was able to share what we call best practices here with people who are interested in doing business in foreign countries, and understand that Africans, like Black Americans, are all over the world.
Right.
We don't all live in America.
You are so right. My brother and his daughter has a coffee business that they do out of Africa. They were able to employ Africans because the coffee beans come from there. Mm-hmm. And so they were able to do the business so that they can have jobs, and then they transport it and sell it here. They're getting ready to build a coffee shop where so they can put the money back in the community and still make money because they sell it by the cup.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing. It's amazing how my niece, she started going over there in missions work, and she met such incredible people. They were able to start the business like that. And those connections are very important.
Absolutely.
You have emphasized the importance of new strategies and planning for building economic infrastructure in African American communities. Could you share some specific strategies you believe are crucial for achieving economic equity and mobility?
I think you got to create an organization or some entity that speaks to that and is able to mobilize some of the resources and thoughts of the people that you're trying to empower. I think with your organization that you're a part of, I think that's a perfect opportunity to mobilize people, garner the kind of resources you need, and solicit the resources you need in order to drive the agenda that you put on the table. For example, one of the things that we talked about here in Greensboro with GBL was increasing the budget for MWBE, or Minority Women in Business Enterprise Participation. They didn't have the staff, really. They had a staff, but they needed more money in order to employ more people to do the kind of job that needs to be done. We also did a disparity study. We've had 4 or 5 disparity studies that's been conducted that will talk about where the spending is being done and where the disparities are, and how we need to come up with recommendations and resolutions in order to close the wealth gap, close contract spending with African American businesses. So there are a number of things that you can do, but you got to have some organization that's going to be the voice in order to do that and negotiate the kind of opportunities and strategies and deals that you need to put on the table. Just like any other community. They have chambers of commerce, they have community foundations, they have United Ways, they have economic development groups. But a lot of times those groups have no one that looks like us in those organizations because they have their own agenda. And until we raise the issue about it, they will keep and continue to do what they're doing. So I say create your own. And try to leverage some of that public money and also private money, because we spend money like everybody else, and we need to be able to build our communities so we don't have to solely depend on outside resources to influence all of our thoughts and decisions. And that's the importance of creating those strategies and recommendations, so you can build at least a core network and a core entity in your community and a core framework that you can work from, so you can be able to leverage and negotiate when you need something and you don't have to totally depend on people who may not have your interests at hand to do what you need to do. We've done that before. I mean, we put out nickels and dimes and quarters together to send kids to school. We have forgotten some of those things that our parents have done and grandparents have done to send us places when they wanted education to be number one. They worked their butts off, whether they were cleaning, cooking, it didn't matter, working in the farm. They did everything they could do to send you off so you will get a good education and come back and bring some of the education back to the community and build opportunity. We wasn't sending you off just to, act the way you want to act. we were investing in your intellectual capacity to be successful and hopefully come back and create some opportunities in your community or in your family. I mean, that's what I thought we were doing, and I think we've kind of gotten away from that because we're, when you get wrapped up in everybody else's agenda and you want to be over here when you need to be over here, you lose focus. And trust me, competitors and predators will make you lose focus.
They will. They're designed to do that.
Yeah, they make you lose focus. Yeah. So just be aware.
Very insightful. As we conclude, looking towards the future, what do you see as the most promising opportunities for driving sustained economic growth and empowerment within our historically excluded communities? And how do you envision your work continuing to make a difference in this vital arena?
Well, my work never stops. I'm committed. I haven't gone anywhere. As long as I'm living, I'm going to be committed to my mission and goal, economic empowerment, creating ecosystems for Black companies, connecting the dots domestically and globally. So that's where my focus is, and trying to create opportunities, particularly for the next generation and young people who are going to take the mantle and run with it. I think the other thing is that we got to get back to basics. We really have to get back to basics. We've got too many distractions. We can't talk about advancing when we got crime, which is at the top of the agenda in most Black communities, particularly in urban areas, which is absolutely pathetic. And we've got to raise the issue in that. We got to stop that. We got to pull these young people out of these situations where they have to make those kind of tragic decisions that's going to destroy a generation of people. It's unrealistic and it's unsustainable. So we got to do that. At the same time, we've got to be able to create a platform and structure that works for Black people and Black companies. And if the churches got to get involved, have the churches involved. They'll have a seat at the table. But understanding that seat at the table gives you whatever that 2 or 3 ideas you have that goes in the pot with everybody else's idea. We create a blueprint, for lack of a better term, a blueprint that works, and we stick to it and we change it and we modify it as we go. But that needs to be a 25, 30, 40, 50, 100-year plan that we put on the table, and we just stick with it. I don't think we have had those kind of intentional conversations with each other that, look, we get it. We understand the community. We understand the challenges. We understand poverty. We understand the politics of what's going on. We understand that some of that stuff that we're dealing with is infiltration in our community that caused some of this mess. But at the end of the day, when you decide to take action that you're taking that's going to destroy generations of Black people, you have to be held accountable.
Exactly.
Now, and so whatever platform you put in place to hold those people accountable, the community has to have its own internal kind of platform to hold those people accountable, because once they get past that, the system is going to deal with them. And ain't a whole lot you can do once they get in the system.
It makes it much harder, that's for sure.
It makes it a whole lot much harder. You know, somebody's gonna have to go up there and try to raise HELL toothpicks and file lawsuits and all that other stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know how it goes.
I love what you said about the 2050, 100-year plan. I think that's one of the things that we come short in. We plan for now. We don't look far enough out to generations to come to understand that we need a blueprint for how they're going to do things.
Absolutely.
And it's so vital because you mentioned too about getting young people involved. That is something that I think is really, really crucial at this point, because we are losing them to is an intentional distraction to keep them from understanding their genius, to understanding that they have a part to play in our economic systems as historically marginalized communities. So, you know, they put strategies in place. I'm not saying that to make our young people not responsible for their actions, but they make it easier for them to do wrong.
Absolutely.
Than it is to do right. But it starts at the church, and we actually have an initiative here at SCA right now. We have about 13 or 14 pastors who have decided to do a collective work outside of the walls of the church. And I think that that is going to be a catalyst for the change that you've been talking about.
Part of the structure of what you have to create, the church, the business community, the nonprofit community, the education community.
Right.
You create a collaborative in that sense, or cooperative in a sense, where all the parties are saying pretty much the same thing and working in conjunction with each other to make sure that we can eliminate some of the disruptions that are happening in our communities that cause us to take one step forward and two steps backwards.
Can you give us some last words for our listeners?
Number one, be realistic about what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And it takes time. Also understand it takes investment, whether it's $1, $2, or $100. You know, whatever you can invest to the cause or to the strategy that's going to be impactful and create those opportunities for our communities and our businesses. So you got to buy from people that have a stake in your community. If they don't have a stake in your community, you need to think about how you're spending your money. I think collaboration. Find those partners, as we were talking about a few minutes ago. The education community, it's the church community, it's the business community, the nonprofit community, to come together, have these meetings, and have these thoughts and ideas as a brain trust to make sure that you put the right kind of things that's going to represent the issues that you're trying to resolve and you're trying to be successful at. So those are some of my, and understand that everybody plays a part in this. Don't point your finger over there. It's on them. No,
it's on all of us.
Yeah. I tell people, when you get up in the morning, you go to the bathroom, you look in the mirror, who you see?
Exactly.
You see yourself. Exactly.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Black Pages before we go?
It's evolved for me. I still publish in Triad Market and still have the name Black Pages USA as a trademark, but that has evolved into more business relations, community engagement, business outreach, and really helping businesses to expand their reach, whether it's in the political circles or whether it's in the economic development circles. When people reach out to me, I tell them they reach out to me for two things. They want to get access to somebody, or they're trying to expand their business somewhere.
Right.
And the third thing, they're their wits end about how to do it. So that's when I get the calls. Yeah. So that's kind of Black Pages over the 30, 35 years period that I've been doing. Is kind of involved into that.
Gotcha. Well, you have really set a standard for everyone that we are able to follow as well. And once again, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Barriers radio show. And we'll be right back after this message.
Beyond the Barriers nugget of wisdom from Coach Cindy.
Hi, this is Coach Cindy, and I'm bringing you the nugget of wisdom for the week. And today I'm going to talk about a very important word that we should all understand when we say it or when we receive it. The word has a few connotations and is too often used without understanding. The word is trust. This word is most often used between people that have a close and or intimate relationship. The word generally signifies that one or both parties hold dear the words and actions of the other. But what does wisdom say about trust? Well, before I talk about that, let me give you the definition of the word. Reliability and truth, ability and strength of someone or something. The question is, who can or should we trust, and who can be trusted? Well, wisdom teaches us that we should put our trust in a divine authority, in the Lord and his love, because he is the only being that is reliable and true and has the ability and strength to lead and guide us in this life. He also says that we should not lean to our own understanding. Too often, we trust people and we don't understand what we're asking of them. And we ask someone to trust us and we have no idea what it means to be trusted. But when we do anything less than put our trust in our divine authority, we subject ourselves and others to the inevitable disappointment of each other. We ultimately are not trustworthy as human beings, because all humans, no matter how wonderful they are flawed, which means that at some point, to some degree, they will break the trust. But our divine authority, the Lord, who is the creator of love, is without flaw and is incapable of breaking the trust he has created between us and him. Now, as for people who put their trust in love, we become trustees of love's trust. So if someone in your life wants you to trust them, you should make very sure that they are the trustees of love. Otherwise, you are bound for disappointment. So let's don't disappoint ourselves or others today. Let's trust in the only trustworthy being that has ever existed. Let's trust the divine authority of our Lord, who is the creator of love.
Beyond the Barriers nugget of wisdom from Coach Cindy.
Beyond the Barriers radio show.
Attention innovators, community builders, and champions of positive change. Beyond the Barriers radio show is inviting you to be part of our empowering journey. We're on the lookout for sponsors who believe in breaking barriers and amplifying voices in historically excluded communities. Want to showcase your brand or cause to our engaged audience? Visit Sandhills Corporation or to explore exciting sponsorship opportunities, from on-air endorsements to impactful commercials. Become a part of a platform that celebrates resilience, triumph, and community strength. Our show is not just about telling stories. It's about shaping narratives and making a lasting impact. By sponsoring Beyond the Barriers, you align your brand with a mission of inclusivity, empowerment, and positive change. Visit sandhillscooperation.org today to purchase advertisements, endorsements, or even secure a spot as a guest on our show. Let's break barriers together and create a vibrant, connected community. Beyond the Barriers radio show, where every sponsorship is an investment in positive transformation. Be a catalyst for change. Visit sandhillscooperation.org now. Beyond the Barriers radio show. Breaking barriers, building connections.
We have been discussing economic development within historically excluded communities and what does it look like. Join us next week as we continue our discussion on economic development within historically excluded communities and what does it look like.
We want to thank today's guest, Mr. Gerry McCants. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Beyond the Barriers radio show.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. Continue to tune in every Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. Please listen live 24/7 by going to wdrbmedia.com and click on the Listen Live tab. Also, if you want to be a guest on the show or want free advertising, call us at 910-573-3070 or email us at sandhillscooperation@gmail.com. Connect with us on social media at Sand Hills Cooperation Association, also at Beyond the Barriers Radio Show. You've been listening to Beyond the Barriers Radio Show, and we are your hosts, Mayor Sherri
and Coach Cindy on WDRB Media, the voice of the community, for double the information and inspiration. Sowing seeds of change, breaking barriers, and transforming lives. That's what we do at Beyond the Barriers. Until next week, continue to be blessed.
Beyond the Barriers Radio Show.